Ladies and gentlemen, welcome after the lunch break to the next session. Please find your seats. We still have seats available here in front, on both sides actually. So it's easy to find seats. Yeah, please come in. Still counting. Very good. Welcome to the session EOSC Impact and Opportunities on the Infrastructure Landscape. In this session, we will bridge the gap between national infrastructure landscapes in different countries and put this into the perspective of the EOSC Federation and EOSC nodes. And we will do so in a two-staged approach. First, we will present you a number of selected infrastructures from a national perspective. And in this case, since we are in Berlin, I hope you understand that we just brought a number of German examples. So those are infrastructures that are run on the national level who have the dedicated task to provide services and products to users, mainly, I would say, not exclusively, but mainly in Germany. And this should give a certain breadth of what kind of infrastructure is there with a national task. But then, in a second stage, we want to put this into a perspective, of course, a European perspective. And therefore, we will have a panel. And on the panel, we will have persons representing different perspectives from different countries. Some of them have an infrastructure perspective, and some of them have a ministerial or political perspective. So we have a multi-view perspective on this topic. It's a great pleasure to have you all here in the room. It's really a very good audience, and I think this is a credit to the topic that even after lunch, you're all willing to come to the session. Thank you so much for joining this session. We will have the opportunity that you ask questions, so please use the Slido infrastructure to present your questions, or use the opportunity when we open up the questions for the audience. And now I would like to open the stage with the lightning talks. And the lightning talks will have different topics. And the first one, I'm very happy to have you here, Christian Grimm from the German National Research and Education Network, in German DFN. He plays a very crucial role for Germany's infrastructure, in particular for universities, but also for a number of research organizations, by providing fundamental access. Without the DFN, to make it very simple, we just wouldn't be connected. And so it's a very important infrastructure. And Christian will highlight what this actually means from his perspective. So please, Christian, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Oh,
this is my laptop.
Oh, sorry. Well, this is my clicker, and that should be sufficient. Here are my slides. You can see them there? Okay. So yeah, good afternoon. Hope you all had a good lunch. And the talk is about EOSC import opportunities, infrastructure landscape in Germany, and finally, the National Research Education Network. I assume you're all familiar with the concept of National Research Education Networks. So this is the German one. I assume you all have an NREN-like organization in your respective countries, and if you are from Europe, all these NRENs should be organized as a member or associate in the GEON Association. I'll come to this in a minute. About DFN, let's start with this one. You all have NRENs, and from the distance, all NRENs look similar. If you zoom in, all NRENs are not that similar. We at DFN are a non-profit organization under German law, so we are private first. We are not public. Second, we have a history. So some folks thought in '84 already, let's establish an association and name it Verein zur Förderung eines deutschen Forschungsnetzes e.V. That's not that relevant. However, since then we have developed, and this year you see this, we celebrated our 40th anniversary. Currently we have more than 350 members, institutional members from R&E in Germany. So what we do, I thought that was an animation, but now you see the entire picture already. And see what we do. And the interesting part is, are we an infrastructure? If you look into our organization, in our offices, we think less we are an infrastructure, we are a service provider. Well, today we think more about services than infrastructures, but at the very beginning, of course, infrastructure, that was what we did. We built a network and we built servers and all this on top of the network. But today we think we operate services. We provide services to our community, to our users. So our network, the core infrastructure, yeah, that's okay. At 50 places in Germany, so we reach many places in Germany, from the island of Heligoland to the mountains in the Alps, wherever research is executed, is being done. We reach more than 2 million staff, students, and scientists in first place. And yes, we have 933 institutional customers. So you see the members, but then we have more legal entities we serve. And the last point probably is quite interesting here. We see us as service providers, but we provide operational services. They must run, they must be resilient in all these cases, they must be secure. And we do all the contracts, the paperwork. Sometimes I use it as a joke. We know how to do the paperwork. We have to do the paperwork. So these contracts are not with end users. The contracts are with institutions for the various services we have in place. But without services, there's no business. And we do business. We have to do this. I'll show you in a minute why. On the other hand, we have more than 2,000 contracts with the market, with suppliers. So we use the market heavily. We take from the market what is relevant and make it fit for research and education. That's why we exist. Oh, sorry, I saw that's the network. Not that relevant anymore. It's the infrastructure. Funding, and here I think we are a bit different from others. I think the fourth bullet on the slide, no subsidies by federal or local state ministries as of today. That is important. So we are, in that sense, funded by subscription fees for our services. You may take our services for a certain subscription fee, or you may take not. That's up to what our members want from us or take from us. We have membership fees. Of course, we participate in some projects, but the main income is really subscription fees for our services. It looks pretty, oh, that's a great idea. It's a great blueprint for others. Hang on, wait. We have 40 years of history, and in the first 20 years, imagine 2 decades, from a funding perspective, we got substantial support, let's call support, but also subsidies from the ministry at that place, from the federal ministry, BMFT in the first place, and the next successor, BMBF. So never forget this when you consider DFN as of today as a very sustainable or sustained model. So it's a blueprint, sometimes yes, in most cases not, but still some principles may apply. So what do we do with respect to EOSC and NFDI? We are an very early member in EOSC Association and NFDA Association, not just because we are an association. It's really, we like the principle of members, partners joining in an association, discussing, and then the association having either coordination or providing services, whatever the end will be. But first place, the concept is very familiar to us, so we were happy in joining the associations and participate in the discussions. We did participate in early EOSC projects, the very first one, EOSC Pilot. Mainly we are the GEON Association, the umbrella association of NRENs in Europe I mentioned earlier, but also some succeeding projects. But then we have decided we would better leave participation in these projects to others who are more closer to what EOSC does, and now we are participating in the EOSC task forces and not in projects anymore. It's a conscious decision also that we don't participate in the NFDI consortia. You will hear in a few minutes, in a few seconds more about this. It was a conscious decision by us to not participate in specific consortia. Would have been only a subset of our members. What we did is that we tried to shape or participate in the discussions here. I say basic services. Initially, it was cross-cutting topics. So what topics are relevant to NFDI and to all consortia in the NFDI? Because this would represent a lot more what our members at DFN use. So really the balance between what NFDI needs and what DFN has to serve or has to develop further together with its members. That is very crucial for us. And this is our perspective also predominantly today on NFDI, what's coming from them, how can we support better, and what is relevant for an NFDI could be relevant to others, to our other members who are not members or participants in NFDI consortia. And from that, we today very much involved in especially the AI context, the service we provide since many years, and further develop this, make it fit for NFDI, through NFDI to EOSC, but also to participants, members who are not that close to NFDI or EOSC. And these research organizations, universities, however you call it, still exists, of course, in Germany. So that's a short tour of what DFN is, what DFN does, what we do in first place, and how we position ourselves towards EOSC and NFDI. 5 minutes, I have no idea. Thank you.
Sometimes forever is just a second. No, kidding. Thank you very much. And actually, you put the scene already for our next speaker. It's a great pleasure to welcome Professor Sonja Schimmler. And she happens to be at the same time at Fraunhofer Focus, which is an institute here located in Berlin. But even more importantly, she has several hats on with an NFDI tag. And one of the most prominent hats there is that she's participating and leading activities in the Base for NFDI consortium. And this is the so-called Basic Services Consortium. So remember, in NFDI, we have domain-specific consortia coming out of the domains. But here we have one consortium providing things like identity management, which is closely related to what Christian has just presented. But there's more to it. And Sonja will present us what's more to it. Please, Sonja, come to stage.
Welcome everyone. Jörg almost did all of my talk already in his introduction, but that's totally fine. So what I'm going to talk about and give you a brief overview in the next 5 minutes is about Base for NFDI, and the idea is to develop basic services for the German research community. I brought you an overview of NFDI because I suspect you heard a lot about NFDI in the last few days, but maybe it's a good thing to have an overview of what NFDI actually is. So the idea of NFDI is to set up a national research data infrastructure, and as Jörg already mentioned right now, is that we have 26 domain-specific NFDI consortia, which you can see on the slide. What is very special for NFDI is that it was really a community-driven approach. So the NFDI is built up from the different communities, and for each community that was there was a specific NFDI consortium set up. And for instance, there's the consortium NFDI for Data Science and AI, which I'm actually leading, and which I will talk about later today at the NFDI event. And above all those different consortia, so the consortia all did get together and they did form Base for NFDI. So what was also very special is that all consortia are now supporting Base for NFDI and are contributing to Base for NFDI. And what was also already mentioned in the first talk by Christian was the cross-cutting topics, and besides the consortia in NFDI, to connect everyone, there we have the so-called sections that are essentially working groups and sub-working groups and so forth. And we have sections now, we have the sections, metadata, terminologies, prominence, common infrastructures, training and education, and industry engagement, and ethical, legal, and social aspects that somehow crossed out here, but we have five of them here at the moment. When looking at how that all fits together, so we have the consortia, we have Base for NFDI to set up basic services, and we have the sections. So the idea is actually that we have the sections where all the consortia are present, and it's kind of the place where everyone talks to each other, and there it's the place, the sections is the place to think about what are the cross-cutting needs within the consortia. They are discussing that, and out of that also there come the ideas for the different basic services. In those working groups, there are a lot of people. So if there's a section infra meeting, we have around 200 people joining such calls. There is a lot of expertise. So there's infrastructural and technological expertise. There's the domain knowledge. So there everything is brought together. And those sections and working groups can also provide expertise, blueprints, and resources for development processes. So they can really help to shape it. And what the sections and its working group actually are, they are incubators for continuously identifying potential basic services. So what you see in the graphic on the side are all the different topics we identified in the beginning, and based on those, now all the discussions are taking place, and within the sections, within the working groups, then the ideas for the basic services were developed, proposals were defined, and now the working groups are accompanying the different basic services. So what is BASE for NFDI? BASE for NFDI is an initiative of all different NFDI consortia, and it provides a framework for basic service development. So there was not a definition from the very beginning. We will develop those 10 basic services, but the idea was to have a framework, to have funding, and if there are ideas coming in from the different partners, from the different institutions, from the different consortia, then BASE for NFDI can pick them up and fund them and make it happen that the different basic services are developed. So they are a framework for defining potential basic services. They support a user-driven requirements analysis. They support a stepwise development for integrating and ramping up basic service candidates. They also set up, so they all put it together. So they set up an NFDI-wide basic service portfolio. They look at it from the top, so they do monitoring and evaluation. And as I already mentioned, they do a transparent allocation of flexible funding, and also, of course, they help with consensus finding. And when looking into the first year or a little bit more of BASE for NFDI now running, here you can see the basic services that already kicked off. There are more in the loop that already proposed, but those are the ones that are now funded and they kicked off. And as you can see, on the one side, you see the ones that came up from the section Common Infrastructure. So one we already heard about, IAM for NFDI, Christian already talked about, so about identity and access management, which is very essential, and also our PID service about persistent identifiers, which is essential as well. There are other services like DMP, like data management planning, which uses RDMO, or NFDI software, which sets up a marketplace, or our Jupyter for NFDI, which builds up a collaboration of different Jupyter Hub instances. There's also two basic services that came up from our section metadata, terminologies and prominence. One, the first one that started is about terminology services, to set up terminologies and have tools to help with that. And the other one is a knowledge graph infrastructure, which just started to build up such an infrastructure, which is partly based on Wikidata. And the last one that is currently funded is from the section Training and Education, so RDMT, so RDMM training for NFDI, which helps setting up the training, some general training for the different communities. Yeah, and that's currently the current status, and there will be more basic services to come in the next years, and we're really looking forward to it. And BASE for NFDI really tries to get the picture, get them all together. So on the one hand side, on this more general level, the basic services, and on the other side, of course, also the integration with all the different services in the different consortia. And when looking at the EOSC, also those services I just presented might be the first ones that can feed into EOSC. I guess there are already quite a few connections, as for instance, Christian already mentioned, but there could as well more to become, and I guess it would be a good starting point for EOSC to start with that. So that's pretty much it from my side. I don't know how many minutes, but yeah, thanks.
Okay, alles klar. Okay. Ja, natürlich. Thank you very much for this very nice overview on BASE for NFDI. And of course, there's more initiatives to be mentioned. And I'm very pleased to have Constanze Kurt, who is heading the Office of the Helmholtz Metadata Collaboration, in short HMC. And HMC is, can I already switch here to the next slide? Yeah, here we go. And HMC is aiming at making Helmholtz data fair. So fair is, of course, a principle that you all know. You probably are also aware about Helmholtz. It's the largest German research infrastructure organization. And therefore, it was quite a step forward from our perspective when Helmholtz decided to kick off the initiative. Constanze, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jörg, also for taking some minutes also from my talk and presentation already. So welcome everybody here. I will introduce, as Jörg just said, the Helmholtz Metadata Collaboration. And here's the clicker. As you heard, it's the largest research organization. We have 40,000 employees, so that you have some numbers, and 18 research centers we're working in. And we have started at the end of 2019 with our initiative, how I call it, with the mission to make the Helmholtz data fair and to put the FAIR principles into reality for all our Helmholtz data that we have, working in 6 different research areas here. And we do this by connecting the existing Helmholtz data ecosystem with the people, the infrastructures, and the organizations that we have. So we have the long-term vision and goal to make Helmholtz data not only fair, but to have a Helmholtz fair data space that is distributed, semantically enriched, and to make all the data that is there in the different centers accessible, explorable throughout the different research areas and fields. We do this by operating from 6 host centers that we have into the entire Helmholtz Association, providing services to them, and then keeping in mind our different stakeholders that we have. Now, it's not Helmholtz itself. We have a lot of collaborations, connections to other partners and initiatives. Of course, there's a very strong connection within Helmholtz, but we also work together on the national level with 11 NFDI consortia. We are part of NFDI sections and other initiatives here. On the European level, we have a lot of projects that we worked in, and we are also part of EOSC task forces, and it is the same on the global level, where we have really a lot of good collaborations here as well. We're part of RDA groups. We have very strong connections to the Fair Digital Object Forum here as well. So we are not in a bubble, I would say. To realize our mission and vision, we work in various areas here, the 3 here, with different activities. So the first area is we look into assessing and monitoring the fair state of Helmholtz data by different activities here. The second is that we want to raise the connectivity of data in Helmholtz with certain technical measures we put in place. And the third area is that we want to advise, train, and enable our community to put the already existing metadata recommendations into practical implementations, and always to keep in mind the 6 research areas we are focusing on. And in the last years, we have already achieved some great results, and I have only picked here 4 examples where I want to make the interlinking to the EOSC and the NFDI and how we connect. So the first area, fair assessment. We have launched a dashboard on open and fair data in Helmholtz that shows the results of our automated fair approach. And for this, we have the Fuji, I hope all of you know this, tool as the backbone. And it's not only that we implemented it, but we also contributed to further code developments of the tool. Oh, sorry, I was too late. Second is recommendations and guidelines. You know, there's a lot of guidelines and recommendations around for FAIR and for metadata, but usually they're very complicated, and our stakeholders, they don't understand it. And that's why it's our task to transform them into easy, understandable documents so that they can use it. The very popular one is the 5 steps to metadata that we have published. And on the other hand, we also talk to our communities and especially the infrastructure providers on how they can implement the recommendations into their infrastructures and repositories that we have to make them fair. Third example are tools tools and services. So we have also implemented where we saw that there is a gap, our metadata tools and services for fair data handling. And of course, these are also aligned to EOSC and other recommendations. And we have in the last year also released our first version of a Helmholtz knowledge graph. And this, of course, is part of the bigger Helmholtz data space that we want to implement. And of course, in the future, this can be integrated and attached to the EOSC knowledge graphs as well. The last example is community projects and processes. We are, like the base for NFDI, we have some flexible funding as well for 2-year projects, and they also put the recommendations into practice, as well as they either reuse existing services from the EOSC or they develop their own tools. Yes. And another thing we're doing is the community-driven processes. We run bottom-up processes as well to put recommendations into practice. One example is the electromyoscopy glossary group, and that is very popular and connected to the Fairmat initiative. So that brings me to the end of my talk. I guess I was over time, I haven't checked. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, thank you very much for this really good overview on the Helmholtz metadata collaboration. And you see there's lots of things going on. And now to complete the picture, I would like to welcome on stage Andreas Witt. You have seen him in different roles here before. He's a professor of computational humanities at Mannheim University and also the head of department for digital linguistics. But for today, more importantly, he is representing the Text Plus consortium, which deals with, guess what, text. Andreas.
Yes, with text and more. This is the plus, so language in all facets, so also spoken language and so on. So good afternoon. I will be presenting this Text Plus consortium, one of the 26 consortia just mentioned. And Text Plus plays a key role in supporting language-based research data. Text Plus is an integral part of the German national research data infrastructure, of course, and specifically designed to empower and enhance the use of language and text data across a wide range of disciplines. The primary objectives of Text Plus are fourfold: to empower access and to use text and language data in research, to enhance digital literacy among the research community, to build collaborative infrastructures that reflect the diversity of research community by fostering participation, and to promote interdisciplinary innovation, particularly in the field of artificial intelligence, by integrating infrastructures and research. Through these objectives, Text Plus ensures that researchers have the tools they need to work with language resources effectively and collaboratively. And just 2 weeks ago, the annual Text Plus conference took place, and the overarching topic was language models, especially large and medium-sized language models, a topic that gained quite a lot of public attention in the last 2 years especially. The partners of Text Plus are many. So we have diverse partners, including 9 academies of sciences, 18 universities, libraries, computing centers, and we aim to foster a robust and inclusive ecosystem. These partnerships are crucial for ensuring the sustainability and continuation of developments of our infrastructure and enable researchers from different fields to benefit from the wealth of resources within Text Plus. Text Plus is a federated infrastructure. This is not by no surprise, because many of the infrastructures presented here are federated. Text Plus is distributed and federated with over 26 centers providing and archiving research data. These centers offer services such as federated data search, certification, and project infrastructure support. One of the key advantages of the infrastructure is its decentralized nature. especially since resources can stay on your institution, but they are also nonetheless available according to the FAIR principles. Our federated model enables interoperability and aligns with the EOSC principles by providing standardized services for search, authentication, and resource management. This supports seamless access to language data for researchers, both within Germany, but also internationally, for instance, through infrastructures like EOSC or also Clarion or Darian that are also involved. So to conclude, TeXt+ is not just about archiving data, but about empowering researchers with tools, infrastructures, and resources they need to innovate and collaborate effectively. By aligning NFDI and EOSC, TeXt+ is positioned to make significant contributions to European and global research data infrastructure landscape, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for giving an overview on one of those 26 consortia. And now, last but not least, I welcome Philipp Wieder, who is the deputy head of GWDG in German, which is among the top German science infrastructure providers, and also he's a professor for research data infrastructure at the University of Göttingen. It's a great pleasure to have you here. One thing to be mentioned, they are part of the consortium who just delivered the EOSC EU node, right? So he has deep insight knowledge on what is going on there. Please welcome him on stage.
Thank you very much, Jörg. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I have the pleasure tomorrow, actually, to setting the scene in terms of what the infrastructure provider perspective is on the EOSC node concept, on the EOSC Federation, and I decided to share a few of these thoughts with you today, maybe also as a stimulation for the upcoming panel. So we have a number of roles and responsibilities in the whole area of EOSC and NFDI. So you see, and Jörg already mentioned it, we are a small partner in this consortium providing a part of the EOSC node, as you have seen during this week. But we are also contributing services to the European Open Science Cloud for a long time now. We are a member of EGI and UDAT. We provide services for ENERIC. We help developing these basic services, which Sonja presented, and Christian also. We are also participating in a number of consortia in the NFDI and also trying to contribute to the cross-cutting ideas like architecture, common infrastructures, and these kind of things. And a number of the colleagues I've seen today are in a similar situation. So we have contributions to quite a number of different service developments, potential nodes, data spaces, and all these kind of things. And we would like to understand, and we have to discuss, how are we going to place these contributions. And if you look at, I borrowed this from Peter, from an older slide, if you see the EOSC node and the EOSC Federation idea, we have the reference node, which has just been launched, but we also have thematic contributions, we have national nodes, we have regional nodes. It will all build up to become the federation in the end. And if I look at what we are doing, and it's just one particular view on those things, we can contribute at many places. Yeah, we are contributing to the EU node, but we can also, through TeXt+ or NFDI for Biodiversity, where we are a partner, contribute to other infrastructure nodes. We could potentially also contribute something to NFDI, to a national node. These are the questions we have at the moment, and these are the questions we have within the NFDI, I think, not only on infrastructure and service provider side of things, but also many of us. So we are looking forward to contributing more and using the momentum, which has been discussed and presented during the whole week. And for that, I think we are looking very much forward to the EOSC Federation Handbook, which will come out sometime in November, at least in a draft version. But we also need to have discussions, and I hope we had some of them, and we'll have some more today and tomorrow, about what actually is a node, for example, on the national level. We also have to understand how the NFDI can strategically actually contribute to the development and the operation. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Philip, for giving a deep dive into what you're doing. No, actually, it was a shallow deep dive. And now is the floor for our panel. And I would like to welcome on stage Mauro Campanella from the Italian National Research and Education Network. Please join at the stage. We welcome Andy Gertz from the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility. Andy, over here. We welcome Stefan Hanslik from the Austrian Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research. Stefan, please come to the stage. We welcome Anna Krivianska from the Slovak Center of Science, Scientific and Technical Information. Please join on the stage. And last but not least, we welcome Marion Steinberger from the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. Thank you very much for being on this panel as of today. And I think we've set the scene very nicely. And I would like to start to give you a chance to introduce yourself and your role in your national, from a national perspective. So what is your view on how does this align with EOS and how do you yourself see in this picture? Please, Mauro, the microphone is on the table.
Thank you very much. Mauro Campanella. I'm part of the GAR network, which is the equivalent of DFN in Germany. So a large infrastructure connecting all the research centers and all the research in Italy, and more than just research. At the same time, I'm working for the National Institute for Nuclear Physics, and I'm currently responsible for EOSC connectivity to the ministry and to the development of EOSC partnership. I'm also involved in G7 about open science. It's really a moving target. It's a very complex environment in which both the physical infrastructures move and also the data infrastructures move. So it's a very challenging moment. I'm very glad to contribute to the discussion.
Okay, so I'm Andy Gertz, and I work at the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility, which is an RI producing science. And I'm also part of the EOS Collège France. So we are integrated since 2 years now with the other EOS projects which are in France. And finally, I've decided to throw my hat in with the EOSC Association to get my hands dirty and see how far we can go with EOSC.
Yes, hello, my name is Stefan Hanslik. I'm a representative of the Austrian Federal Ministry of Science and Research. Within this ministry, I am head of unit Technical Science, a department which is responsible for research infrastructures and e-infrastructures. So I have various heads on. One of it is, of course, my role as a delegate for the Program Committee Research Infrastructures. I'm in the steering board of the EOSC. I'm also the Austrian delegate in the EuroHPC, as well as Euratom and CCFFU and many other things. But finally, I'm also the chair of a member states organization, which is the EERG, the E-Infrastructure Reflection Group, which is already 20 years old now, and goes hand in hand also with our ESFRI opportunities. So this is in brackets what I'm doing. And therefore, I'm heavily involved, of course, with EOSC, and I had the opportunity also to be within the EOSC game since 2016, I guess it was. And 2018, we had the opportunity under the Austrian presidency to launch and acclimate a paper which was called the EOSC Declaration. And since then, things went on very intensively.
Thank you. So my name is Anna Krivianska, and I'm representing the Slovak Center of Scientific and Technical Information. We are a national information center for science, technology, innovation, and also education of Slovakia, and we are a national agency. And my role is to represent Slovakia in the steering board, and our institution is also a mandated organization within the EOSC Association, and we are representing the voice of our researchers within this EU initiative. And we also expressed our interest to participate in the build-up phase of the federation as by establishing our national node, providing, I would say, essential services like data, archiving repositories, and computing services for our community. So we would like to actively participate in this building phase of the federation.
Yes, hello, my name is Marion Steinberger. I'm head of unit for research data and the NFDI at the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. And as the title already said, I'm responsible for the NFDI and the EOSC within the German research landscape. I'm steering board member of both NFDI and EOSC, and I'm trying my best together with the colleagues from NFDI and from the steering board of EOSC to steer both initiatives as smoothly as possible, and in the German case also as parallel as possible.
So Mauro, considering what Christian presented on DFN, and given that you said, I have a similar role in Italy, how do you see, what is EOSC for you in Italy? And how do you see your role as a national infrastructure provider in EOSC in the future?
Yeah, just to comment on what Italy had done during the last 2 years, using the Recovery and Resilience Funds, it decided to fund 5 national centers for different disciplines. One is the computing, data and quantum, and the other are thematic nodes, if you want. This is moving very fast the landscape of the infrastructure. GAR itself connect all the infrastructures, the economical model. I fully agree with what Christian, I know very well, said. I think that we are, as I said, moving very fast, and our government set some key pointers in the landscape of the infrastructure. Unfortunately, we miss yet a data infrastructure as developed as in Germany. That's a key point, but I think the EOSC is the right engine to kickstart that, actually collating all the quite relevant information that we have in Italy, from marine biology to earth science and others. And I really expect EOSC to act as a push towards the use of these common infrastructures and the creation of a data infrastructure.
Thank you. Now, Andy, you're probably the person who does know best about the EOSC Federation Handbook.
I should.
So in addition to your role, this gives you, of course, an insight. So how do you see your role as an infrastructure within EOSC in the future, and what does EOSC mean for your organization?
I see EOSC as an enabler. I see it, so I was coordinating the Photon and Neutron Open Science Cloud, and you saw the potential of getting together European research infrastructures in the same domain, so what we call thematic centers. And I see the EOSC as the thing that will be the catalyzer to go further. So I think, I think the federation is the right next step. And I also think, because I always try and make this experiment with myself, what if EOSC had to stop today? I think a lot of momentum would just slow down and eventually just stop. Yeah? And I think we have to keep it going if we want to get the scientists to that next step of where the plumbing is in place. And I think I would just add a comment, because I'm also involved with OSCARs, the open science calls in OSCARs. There were 58 proposals that were accepted of 250, and the open science call showed this strong interest by a number of scientists, and I think they will then also seed interest amongst other scientists.
Okay, thank you. Stefan, how do you see the role of infrastructure in Austria? And I know that you have also a kind of diversified infrastructure, and what does EOSC mean to you from that perspective? Since you are having a political role, but also have a deep domain expertise in the area.
There are many sides you can look on this coin. But I personally think that the main issue is that the research infrastructures, e-infrastructures, all these backbones of the activities of EOSC, and EOSC as a policy concept, to shorten it up without giving you some additional definitions of it, is the most important thing, and to keep it alive. What my experience was in the last years is that we have built up many let's say, pillars of the EOSC activities. Like, as we heard, like the NRENs in all our countries, they are doing a very good job, except the same story is with the research infrastructures. We've also, let's say, developed over time. So the environment is to keep from the side of the ministry that all these things are possible. I mean, and I'm really very happy just to sit next to representatives of one of my favorite research infrastructures for years, the ESRF. But not only ESRF, it's also CERN and DLL and whatever, EMBO, the ERICS, the whole list of ESRI infrastructures. They're doing a very tough job together with the NRENs to get these things done. We are, let's say, reflecting since years on the desk. And this is the complicated thing. Ending up this with this final statement, it is the most important thing is to still listen to the researchers and their needs and what they want to do. It's not important that we found, let's say, some fancy policy architectures. It's more about what do they really need and what is it for. And as I see it, and I think I'm not alone, this is a success story, and it's carrying on the path we or the scientists started many years ago in the 80s, when having the idea to connect two computers over the big dike and ask the question, how can I exchange my data and communicate with each other? And when I see this evolution till now, it's enormous. And we can be rather critical about what has happened with, I don't know, over 900 billion euro taxpayers' money we've invested into EOSC projects. What do we see now? I think it was worth doing it.
Thank you very much. Now, Anna, from your perspective, I'd like to add, so to the question, what does EOSC play for your national infrastructure? I'd like to add this perspective that you are a mandated organization. So how do you integrate that view of a mandated organization also into that picture?
Yes, so we are a small country, we are almost 6 million, so we really cannot afford big investments, obviously, in research and development, and we're strongly dependent on sources coming from external environment, from leading research performing organizations in Europe and in the world. And the biggest added value I see that our researchers will have access to the data, to the resources, independently of having been involved in its generation or not. And it's a great opportunity, and we need to take advantage of it, of course. And there are also economic benefits, as you know, using existing resources and avoiding duplicities and in costs in works of researchers and all of this managing staff can lead to the saving of resources of our national budgets. So it's, I would like to just repeat, it's a great opportunity for us. And being a mandated organization, I think it's a great opportunity because we can receive a lot of useful information. We distribute to our community. We run our national EOSC secretariat, so we keep our researchers and the whole community informed about what's going on. And it's also important to bring to the association our opinion and perspectives, what is expected and how the trends should look like.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Marion, what is your view from the German perspective? We, of course, have seen now bits and pieces in the lightning talks before, but especially from the German ministry point of view, right? What do you expect from EOSC for the German infrastructure?
Well, I was thinking about this question in the last minutes, and I think, or I ask myself, what is EOSC? Because for me, EOSC is at least 3 parts. First of all, there's the EOSC Association, and I just checked right before this panel session, we have 20 German members in the association, which is actually, I don't think that much. And I was wondering why, but then I realized, yes, because we have the NFDI as mandated German organization, and the NFDI has 300 members, more or less. You know the numbers more or better than I do. So, of course, the NFDI is the channel via the EOSC, but also the other way around, from the EOSC into the German research landscape. So the first part is the association. So EOSC is the association for us. The second part is, of course, all the EOSC projects that have been running for years and years and years. And I think Stefan just mentioned it. It's important to have projects, but of course we all know projects end. And then there's a website and that's it. And we really have to think about how we use the outcomes of the projects for the future. And the third, probably now most important part, is actually the EU node that was presented yesterday. And I heard some positive feedbacks from the researchers. And coming back to the main question, EOSC for me is good and successful if the researchers say the services are needed. And I think that's something for the next months or 1-2 years to see how are the services being really used, and how are researchers somehow participating in, for example, writing the handbook, the EOSC Association handbook for the node and the node system and the federation. And can we really find this added value, or do we replicate things that are already there? Because that's something we should not do. We should not replicate, we should not duplicate, but we should really have this added value and probably link services in a very clever way.
And as a follow-up question, so from your perspective, which kind of national infrastructures will benefit most from participation in EOSC? Is there something like an advantage? So is it like an infrastructure providers who are in the cloud and storage area, or is it infrastructures providers in the network connectivity? Is there something where you would say from your perspective, well, this is really cool. We're having this European perspective now, and this brings us to the next level. Maybe your question, maybe your answers can also be all of them, but that would be maybe too easy. So I'd like to prioritize. What would you say, who would benefit first? And please volunteer for answers.
No, I think we're lucky in France that we have fairly mature services, and some of them, if you take the software heritage or HAL or that, those are mature services which have still a strong national flavor to them. So they're not, I think they were created by the French Ministry or Finance largely, and they don't have the vocation to go across the border. But of course, science is also borderless, and I think EOS will allow these services to become European services or even international services. So I see that as those should be the first ones that I think should become part of the federation.
And is this a matter of the service ends where the funding ends at the border, or is this a language question because the service is provided in your home language, or?
No, it's not. I think software heritage, for example, is not. There's nothing about. It's not restricted to French or France, but it's known mostly as a French service. Whereas if it became known as a European service or a worldwide service, I think, in terms of funding, I'm usually I'm not the right person to ask because I don't provide the funds, and secondly, I always feel if it's useful, the funds will come. I think some of the things that are, if you're struggling to find funds, sometimes it's because maybe there are not so many people asking for that service.
Yeah, I think that we are in an environment in which the analysis of data is moving very fast. So the data challenge is there. I think that the first really to exploit the capabilities of EOSC is the ones that will prepare the data in the right way. And the infrastructures, as infrastructures are moving very fast, the AI factory is one of the examples of what will happen, but we need to prepare data and researchers to the challenge of using an AI factory, which is a completely different way to approach the system. At this point, I think is a matter of who is ready to take the challenge and start using the data. And at the same time, it's on us to ensure that the data infrastructure follows the development of a physical infrastructure. I think we have in Italy a lot of very interesting data about marine ecology and other things that will be hopefully very willing to share with others, because only if we are able to share this kind of information about our environment between countries, we will have a step in the quality of what we will produce.
If I could just add, data I think is really important, and we noticed in the Oscar's open calls, there are lots of small communities of scientists who have important data to share, but they don't have the infrastructure to share it on.
Fully agree. To give it, just to shorten my opinion on that, the answer would be rather complicated. But I think it will be those who take initiative within the let's say the EOSC world, and here again it's those who have let's say high quality data which are almost ready to share. It's those who are having or thinking about building up test beds, how everything could work here. I'm also reflecting to the S3 clusters, for example, which do excellent work with this respect, and of course again our INRANs and our universities. Don't forget the universities as, let's say, as a meta building of research infrastructure, because we have a lot of them, and when connecting them, it is really a critical mass in the EOSC game, as well as the collections. I see a lot of rather good initiatives within EOSC, which are concentrated to classical collections like natural history museums, cultural heritage, and so on. And they have been gone rather far together with other infrastructures and, of course, with data scientists to let's say, improve the situation. Oh, sorry.
So I would answer that, of course, all of research infrastructures will benefit. Nevertheless, they are thematically grouped in life science, hard science, SSH, or environmental research infrastructures. It doesn't matter. But basic, or I would say essential services like networking or computing services are already being provided by national infrastructures. But we need access to advanced services, or, for example, if our researchers are working in ecology and they need, for example, marine ecology data, so I see a big opportunity that they can access this data and to bring their research on another level.
Okay, so you also said we want to, or they need to have access to advanced services. Is there like a wish list of services that EOSC should provide in addition to what has just been released?
It depends on scientific discipline, of course, and on the nature of the data of research they perform. So we need to mobilize our community and to map the needs of them in this aspect in order to be ready to provide some concrete responses or concrete recommendations for services, which will be reachable through the EOSC node and federation.
Well, I personally would hope that all research infrastructures somehow benefit from EOSC, but I would also add to this equation the universities, the higher education institutions, and in Germany the universities of applied science, because they are usually the ones that would probably need the services most, because they don't have that much money to build the services on their own. I mean, in Germany we have the 4 big research organizations. I would say they usually have the money, or at least they have the services, because they are just so big. But individual universities, especially smaller ones, I think it's harder, so I hope they will benefit. And then personally, of course, I would also hope that especially those thematic areas or disciplines benefit that are always left a little bit aside. So when it comes to money, the money first goes into hard science. But of course, we also have the social sciences, the cultural sciences that are usually left aside a little bit. And we know it from the NFDI. We have 4 social science consortia, and they are very active. And they are really working very well together. And sometimes I get told what kind of service they build for a very specific community where you wouldn't even think about, but this community has a need. So the second question you also ask, which kind of services should EOSC provide? I think it should be a good mix between the big services that are for a wide variety of disciplines and institutions, but maybe there might also be the need to offer very specific services that don't get funding from somewhere else, but they are really needed by the community. But of course, that's up to the communities to explain their needs and for EOSC and the NFDI to follow up.
Okay. Now, we have some picture now, what are the kind of organizations that will benefit from EOSC. We had a little discussion on what kind of services are to be expected. There was this metaphor of shortcuts for like University of Applied Sciences, who have a better access due to an infrastructure that is scaled into the breadth, for example. Do you have a picture in mind how end users actually will benefit from EOSC in their daily life? So how would you foresee the interaction with an EOSC federation? I'm not sure if there is any national difference in that, but I would like to see what are your expectations from your perspective, how you run your own business, how you see EOSC is developing. Can you give a hint on that? What if you would be a researcher, how would you use EOSC in future?
Okay, I can start with another example. Maybe this is not directly connected to EOSC, but it's similar, and I think it's more or less an application you will find or can find in EOSC. If I'm a young researcher, I just need a laptop. I do not need a big research infrastructure. When I'm, let's say, in astronomy, I buy a computer for $500, sit down in my office, and I'm connected to, let's say, the full range of data which are produced at ESO, yeah? Because ESO has an open science, an open data policy, and data are available. Not immediately, but after latent time, you can find them, so this is great to have. And when you combine this then with the fact that you are not only connected to ESO, you're also connected to different other astronomy infrastructures, which are publicly funded, by the way, the same as my PhD, for example, which does this, then I have reached it. Then I know. Then this is the future we were dreaming of, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, that this is possible. And I know this is a domain I was mentioning here, but this goes across domains in the meantime. And these examples will also expand in the near future. I'm taking this as an example because I'm working for the Austrian Federal Ministry. So Austria is a small country, but does its best to contribute in these international or European efforts. And I think this was the right decision to do, because otherwise we cannot compete internationally as small country. And this is also we would like to have something like the NFDE, for example. But thanks to EOSC, we are probably into direct contact to the activities of NFDE. I'm just joking because I know that there is already communication going on between the scientists. But this is, I think, the whole spirit. You will have shortcutted access, and you will have the possibility to have a benefit as a researcher, as a scientist, of course. And sometimes this will also happen without knowing it, because in some situations you're participating services without knowing that they are coming from big institutions like Synodo or whatever.
Yeah? I think I could add, I mean, from my personal experience, I've been at ESRF for 37 years now. I know quite a lot how it started. In the beginning, we produced only photons. Then we produced experiments. We had beamlines, so users could come and bring their samples, do an experiment, and they could come. And now, in the last 10 years, there's a strong push to have process data, so they want the software also to run automatically for them. And what EOSC has enabled since the beginning, and it's over the last, since the beginning of EOSC in the last 8 years or so, is that we've added as a final product the data which has been produced from these instruments as part of our infrastructure, which previously, that was, I mean, for the first 20 years at ESRF, the data was deleted after 6 months. It was just completely deleted. Now, we keep the raw data, we also keep the process data, and we have people coming, scientific groups who want to have the nicest presentation of their data to attract other communities to come and use their data, or other scientists from their community. And all of that, the fact that we hired and created data manager posts, data stewards, and that has all been enabled by EOSC. I think without EOSC, I would not have been able to convince my own management that we need, financing in the beginning, and then once they see how it's become part of the operational structure, this is we find the financing to then create permanent positions. So the only thing that worries me in a way, or I still don't see it happening, at a European level, or I know a lot of the institutes in Europe, like even in Germany, we're not all at the same maturity level. So you can find other synchrotrons who are still battling to even store the data. Yeah? And so I don't know how we're going to make that common across the whole of Europe. Yeah? This is still a kind of unsolved problem. Yeah?
I want to go back to the original question, which is the usefulness and what it expects. I would think that the user expects information, does not expect a structure. Structure of information is needed then, and it should be much better than Google in terms of searching what it is interested in, and even in making comparisons or links between different disciplines. This is what I see EOSC trying to do, actually trying to achieve, and I think this is the real added value. It's not just having databases, which are important, of course. We need to keep the information, but we need also to add the rich metadata that is the real richness that the researchers can use. And this is also valid for industry. The national centers in Italy have a participation from industry, and we plan to have these links between the researchers and the industry as close as possible, but we need then the information to be communicated between them in the right way, of course. Yes, I agree, it's complex.
Maybe I would like to add, I think EOSC should become the researcher's best friend from the beginning to the end of the life cycle of research. So really from when you start finding data, to working with data, to storing data, to reusing data, and in a way when the researcher doesn't even think about, oh, I have to go to the EOSC node or whatever, when it's becoming a natural habit just to use all the services and maybe even some training and help desks, I think then the user's needs are clearly, well, followed, or they know that EOSC would be the main entrance point to all their research work. So maybe I'm too visionary, but I think we should be visionary because we launched the node yesterday, and I think the next 2-3 years will be crucial. So in a way, if we have Amazon or a Google for research data management, that would be great. So I think yesterday we said, let's meet in 5 years again and see at the symposium what has become out of it. That will be really interesting.
So during these days, we heard a lot about potential benefits and impact of the EOSC, and I would like to add just a summary of these expectations. So gaining such a huge resources of data and services as such and other tools will create unique opportunities for researchers. They can accelerate their research and innovation. They can broaden their scientific knowledge and set up new collaborations, also of interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary character. And last but not least, we can increase our excellence, European excellence of research in general. And from the perspectives of national funders or research funding organizations, I would say that investing money, after investing money, of course, we need to see benefits and results. Yes, and I think that EOSC can bring certain results in a very short period. So let's see.
So where's Karel? You're the researcher's best friend, right? That is the new goal. I would like to open up the scene now for questions from the audience. And I see that there is a first question. Could you please come with a microphone over here in front? And I also like to prepare questions from Slido, which we ask afterwards.
Maybe it's a question or comment, take it as you wish, but following your question on EOSC Federation, what it is, we have Schengen environment in Europe, and it's wonderful that with my one ID card from my country, I can travel everywhere, to some extent work everywhere, and do a lot of things in many countries, in different environments, and this exactly would be wonderful if EOSC Federation is. So maybe the question would be, do you think this is what EOSC should be?
Thank you.
I can remember, I do not want to be always living in the past, but I can remember the days in 2018 we talked about. I think it was also published in one publication called The Architecture of Knowledge at that time. And which is, I think, a very good phrase to define what we are doing here. And there it was explicitly mentioned that we want to create the Schengen room for European research data and services. So it is, for me, this is, let's say, in my DNA since then. It got a bit lost over time now. And there were some developments, also semantic developments. And out of this, there was then this idea to create the World Wide Web of scientific insights, which is also very elegant, but this is, I guess, still a very big objective, yeah, which hopefully will come. So I'm convinced.
Now, maybe given what we have seen from the EOSC EU node, you can log in with your identity from different, no matter where you are, right? You can transfer data to where you need it. So from that perspective, maybe there's a first step into that direction. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and don't forget the legal aspects. We have, and this is maybe one of the big European specialities. We have, I think, we counted it once, 34 different regulations and laws.
Only 34? Are you sure?
Only 34. It's only about the research data. I do not know how, but research data, it's 34, to my knowledge. Which regulate this. So this is our so-called legal framework. And there's some prominent and maybe some annoying regulations as well for the scientists, but they are here. And this is exceptional. The US doesn't have it, the Chinese don't have it. So we are, concerning the regulations, we are very good in Europe.
Marin would like
to maybe
add.
Just to add, yes, I think it's important to have a single European market for data. But that also means, or that implies that we really care about data sovereignty in Europe. And that leads to, of course, some much more political questions. How do we deal with the data that we have within Europe when it comes to collaborating with other world regions? And there are some world regions we know where we probably have to be a bit careful about how we deal with data and data exchange. And I think that's one point that sooner or later, maybe not tomorrow, but soon also EOSC and the NFDI have to think about. How do we deal with that kind of question when there are researchers asking from non-European regions and non-associated countries to benefit from the services and especially from the data there. So I think that's something that we always have to keep in mind, and it will be crucial for the future.
Yeah, full support, and I was really not joking. I think it is really important to have this framework, because I can remember, I think it was 3 months ago, the CEO of NVIDIA was asked in an interview as a final question, but he wants to give as an advice, and he said he would emphasize the countries of the world to take care about their data. And this says enough, I think, about this infight we have at the moment, this international one.
But I'm sorry to say, I don't see how we can call it the Open Science Cloud if we start talking about data, national data.
So we go into detail. Do you know the Public Sector Information Guideline? It's one of these regulatory things, and in the Public Sector Information Guideline, there is the definition of open inside. And believe me, it's just a list of exceptions. Yeah? It sounds funny, but this means that Europe is, let's say, has the ability to define what is open, keeping in mind this phrase as closed as necessary. Yeah? And this as closed as necessary is defined in not only, but maybe for the public sector information, it is defined there. Yeah? And I think this is important to know that it is not open to the world, because we decide what is open, and the institutions decide what data are open. They have the power to decide this. Yeah?
Maybe two comments, one from Mauro and then one from Andy.
I think we're going backwards, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I think that I see EOSC as a process, and if you see that as a process, we need to be flexible and agile. I think that the idea of having a federation that includes nodes and national nodes actually adds that agility that we need to better interact between ourselves and the rest of the world, to distribute what we think has to be distributed. I may seem a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a technician, but nonetheless, I plea for the agility of what we are doing. I think we really have to, according to my experience, in a lifetime of 6 months, 1 year, because things change very fast. And so I want to be sure that EOSC, and I hope we are doing that together, is agile enough to accommodate our needs or the needs of the researchers. I fully agree.
But I immediately pick up on the fact, agility, I agree with it, and I think we have to work with the rest of the world. Yeah. So we have data, for instance, which are petabytes of data of the human body, which are all stored at the ESRF as well as at Google, and Google offers us other services for free. And the size of this data and the services they offer, we couldn't find for free in Europe. So, then we can't say that they're exploiting us either. So I think openness comes with a risk, but it also comes with a lot of advantages.
I like the spirit and the engagement. But here's my drip of water into the wine. So we had lots of really cool discussions over here during coffee time, and we talked about one infrastructure that is hosted by a university, and the person hosting it said, look, it's really cool. We have global access. We have hundreds of thousands of users, or tens of thousands, but now we have an electricity bill of over 100,000 euros for running that service. And in Germany, there is no one taking over that bill, and my university is getting cut down, so who's going to pay that bill in future? And if you talk about openness, this question has to be answered in future, right? So who's going to pay the electricity and the rest of the things we need for services that are globally available? It's a non-trivial question. I don't know if you have answers, but this is one of the key questions we have to answer for EOSC, I think, on different levels.
Yeah. I think when we talk about data, I agree, there's always a cost, but the biggest cost is often finding the human resources. So getting and having people who can look after the data. After that, in terms of data, well, I think cold storage addresses a lot, part of the electricity costs, so storing data on tape. And I'm a real optimist in that I think DNA storage will one day allow us to store all the data of the EOSC in a few cubic centimeters. So I see there are solutions for storing data. But compute is, of course, something which has another price tag.
Maybe just to add, of course, we are supporting international cooperation. I've worked in international cooperation for the ministry for 15 years, but we should not be naive, especially not nowadays. And another comment, maybe I'm mistaken, but I understood the EU node only open for European researchers and researchers from EU countries and associated countries. Maybe I'm wrong. The Commission probably will be able to answer this, but I don't think that researchers from non-European countries can actually register. So it would be interesting to hear from the Commission whether this is correct or not. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I would say a quick answer. Yes or no?
So I don't know. Is there someone in the audience?
That's correct. It's on the EU node, as far as I know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's only for institutions.
Yeah. If you have a credential, if you have a identity in one of the European institutes.
Okay. Yeah.
But for data, I would say we need to also when I hear sovereignty, I'm thinking more of provenance. So we need to be sure that the origin of the data, where the value was added to the data, is credited. But once you make it open, you can't make it open and then limit the access. When you make it open, it's open. And I'm not talking about health data or personal, what's called personal data.
I like the enthusiasm about this question, and I think there's more to say, but I would like to give the chance to people asking questions in Slido.
Yeah, there is a question about the collaboration between NFDI and EOSC, and the question is about what are the chances or the plans that the solutions that have been developed in NFDI will be open and used in EOSC. What are the plans?
Well, in a way, I think it's rather for you to answer, Jörg. But what I can say is that, I mean, the 8 NFDI basic services have been presented, and I think the speaker already mentioned that there should be now, as the next step, some kind of communication with the procurement team to see where the benefits from both sides can be. And I also know that the Basic Service Consortium, they've just published a few days ago in English, so for all to read, a document on Zenodo on interoperability between NFDI and EOSC. So I think that's now the start with the start of the EU node to really get in contact, but not only from the NFDI, also from other big research institutions from other countries, to really use this chance to give feedback to the tenderers, to inform them what is useful, what should be improved, where there are maybe national solutions that are easy to adopt and to be made available for the whole community. So from the ministry side, we are very open, but we know that there are many, many things still to be discussed and resolved.
Now there's a famous song saying you can leave your head on, but maybe I put my head as a moderator slightly on top. So I think what we need to achieve with NFDI is to pave the way to show how national developments and thematic developments can link into the European open infrastructure. These are the topics we're discussing around and around. And I know it won't be an easy solution, but we are the ones to solve that issue. And now I put on my head again. Is there another question from Slido?
Well, there is another question, but I think that this has been already answered. Maybe this one that is more about if the other countries that are represented in the panel are willing to fund a national node for EOSC.
I'm the coordinator of a national activity about EOSC, and we went through a process of taking that decision, essentially. Given the uncertainty of what EOSC national node is, the decision was that since the government is funding seriously a national center for computing, which will host the large HPC machines and others, it would be natural to have a national node in the same physical place, but also logically linked to the national nodes for high-performance computing or supercomputing in general. We agreed, in terms of EOSC community, to suggest that to the EOSC Association. We are not sure it will be accepted. But the fact that we saw a national node not just as a physical entity, but mostly as an entity that then collect the information better for the whole of the country. Because what is missing is that the single specific thematic nodes have a very large and very good amount of information for their community. But what we miss is the guide for all Italy of what are the thematic nodes, the small nodes and the small others, and that's a kind of index with the correct type of metadata that is missing, and only the national side can do that, because no other one. So we were positive, and we think it's useful.
Yep, full agreement also with this approach Italy is doing, but coming from the perspective of a ministry, and the question was monetary. Are we willing to spend here? Yes and no, because there are pre-existing structures in the countries, at least in Austria. There's a pre-existing structure which is also funded by the ministry. The membership in the ESRIS is funded by the ministry. The NREN is funded by the ministry. The universities are funded by the APIOs and so on. So everything has public money in it. But when it comes to the let's say the effort to build up or to work within a node, a regional node, a thematic node, or whatever, then it's the other way around. We ask the question: what does the community need, and do they want to participate? Do they want to adapt one or the other services with examples of their data to jump into this let's say new step? And then we ask the question: is there sufficient support existing or not? Because I'm still convinced that EOSC is consisting on the federation of pre-existing infrastructures and services, as it was said a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
so it's not only about the money.
Yeah, okay. Quick answer?
Yeah.
And then we have another question.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to organize ourselves on national levels, and thanks to the EOSC, we were able to initiate this process in Slovakia, because we see that national infrastructures and resources are also very fragmented. They don't cooperate with each other, etc. So we need to bring them together, ideally to cluster them and respond to the question. Yes, we are going to participate through the national node we are establishing, providing networking and computing services for researchers.
Thank you. And I think there was a final question from the audience.
I don't know if it's final. Jochen Sachko from the BMBF.
Put the mic in front. No, just like this.
Now. Better? Okay. 2.5 years, 5 years from now, milestones. Next week, I'm in the parliament and I have to defend the budget. And Germany is in kind of at the moment, a tight spot, budgetary-wise, like a lot of other countries as well, I guess. So I have heard a lot of science cases here now, or I understood there were science cases. I'm not an expert on your topic here. What do I tell these guys and girls there? Why this is totally necessary, and without it, we lose innovation and competition worldwide. And I need one sentence short answers, because I cannot give a longer explanation.
Excellent.
I would make the analogy. It's like you're building a football stadium and you don't pay for any upkeep to it. You just, you build it and you leave it as an empty building. I think with the risk we take investing all this money in science, producing data, and not managing it, is like not finishing the job.
I can give an even better example. Austria, don't laugh, Austria really built up a nuclear power plant and did not switch it on. So, and this is serious. It's Wendendorf. But come to the point, I know exactly what you are heading to when you are standing in front of those to explain in one word what is going to do. Is the effect of not funding it is wasting money at the end. Because imagine that all these connections, efforts, shared services, also profits for science research, the participation in many other infrastructures and so on, is not possible, which is the case if you do not invest a bit of it. This is a big loss of money and competences. And nobody in politics can stand this, I guess.
Thank you. So here's my homework to the audience. Take this question, think about a one-liner, and write to your politician in charge. Thanks to this panel for having a great discussion. I very much liked also the active and engagement part. Please give it a hand. And with this, it is my great pleasure to hand over to Ute Gunzenheimer for the last and final session.